Welcome everybody to Witte TV, the first rebellic Swedish channel in internet television, broadcasting from Sweden. We will approach a special theme today, which is very unknown worldwide and very, very important. And this is the interaction between the human brain and computers. This sounds very interesting, it is interesting, and it is really astonishing that the usual mass media don't talk about that so often, because it has a very bright side and a very dark side. And we have today gathered a lot of Swedish expertise, because Sweden is, together with Russia and the United States, leading in those researches. The Swedish expertise has not got so much focus internationally as it should get, and therefore we took that step to contribute to the research and to open your eyes what is really going on. And to my right we have Robert Naeslund. He is a very famous person in that branch. The first book I wrote from the Lamas in German 12 years ago, they quoted him because he got quite a lot of publicity in the 70s and the 80s, and started to open people's eyes because he had personal experiences from this field, and therefore we would like to start with his testimony. Welcome, Robert. It's very nice that you want to help us to get an eye-opener on this horrible theme, computer and mankind. Closely formulated mind control. With mind control, this is a special expression, is meant that people are against their will forced to do something, that their minds and brains are controlled. And you gathered a lot of evidence about that, especially good evidence in our eyes was the Ethical Commission from the European Commission from 2005, if I recall it right. And it was a Swedish professor who was the chairman, and you got some statements there.
Mm-hmm. I have a lot of statements about this technology, and I have been working with this for the last 10 years. In fact, it has been a part of my life. And well, what is very important to understand is that we're living in a technological culture, but have not any knowledge, in fact, about the most important high-tech developments which ever have become to be a part of our society. And this project, what we call for mind control, or more correct to say brain-computer interaction, was coming out from a technology developed in the 40s, and it became to be known in 1948 when the American professor Norbert Weiner published his book Cybernetics, and that is regarding to the remote control of biological functions and supercomputers via two-way radio communication. And it was already from the beginning, already in the 1940s, predicted to change humankind to a greater extent than any technological development would do. And the full capabilities of this technology is also to control biological functions in bodies and minds. And it has in fact been a lot of books written about this. New York Times has become to be one of the best newspapers in the world, which also has published hundreds of articles about this technology. And already in 1948, when they took up Professor Norbert Weiner's cybernetics, they wrote, "It appears impossible for anyone interested in our civilization to ignore this book, Cybernetics, and its tremendous and even terrifying implications." And already from the beginning, it was possible to, by remote control, connect people via electrodes in their brain. And those research projects, they started already at this time. We can understand that this technology, it went on by abuse. People who were misused. People were misused, and they who were exploited, they did not know about it themselves. And already 1946, the very famous Swedish hospital, Karolinska sjukhuset, the Karolinska Hospital, implanted electrodes in the brain of unwitting patients during the time when they were put to sleep for operations. Already 1948, the most famous Swedish child hospital, Saxka barnsjukhuset, did put electrodes in the brain of newborn children. All this, what I take up, has also been testified in the best way by reports. And about this, which happened at the child hospital, there is a special report, Dr. Frankenstein at Saxka Children's Hospital. And very much of what I'm going to talk about has been testified by professors and so on. Just only a couple of years later, after this development started, they built it in behind the walls of secret institutions, the security police and military research institutions. This was going on an international development, as well in Sweden like in the United States.
And in Russia.
And in Russia, for sure, also. There has been an American professor, Just Merlot, and he took up this technology in the book The Rape of the Mind from 1953, and he took up the projects which started already in Russia in the 30s with this technology. And just to give some evidence about how it was developed, about my words, what I did just say, we can quote another American professor, John C. Lilly, and he was called for a meeting 1953, and with the director of the US Mental Institute. At that meeting, the director did try to have Professor Lilly to join the CIA and FBI with his projects, with this technology. He was working with electrodes in the brain of dolphins and chimpanzees. But he did refuse. And those words he gave as his explanation, he also published in his memoirs, The Scientist. And I will just make a quotation from that part, and it tells very clearly about how they organized this project in United States and all around the world, like in Sweden, England, France, Spain. He said, as explanation why he refused to work with CIA and FBI in this operation. Dr. Antoine Raymond, using our technique in Paris, has demonstrated that this method of stimulation of the brain can be applied to the human without the help of a neurosurgeon. He is doing it at his clinic in Paris. This means that anybody with a proper apparatus can carry this out on a person covertly, with no external signs that electrodes have been used on that person. I feel that if this technique gets into the hands of a secret agency, they could have a total control over a human being and be able to change his beliefs extremely quickly. And it's interesting to hear those words also because it is 58 years old information.
Yes.
This was a possibility for almost 60 years ago to, without any sign, put electrodes into somebody's brain and use him for any purpose.
As a guinea pig.
As a guinea pig, and direct his actions. Also being able to change his opinions. And of course, because we can understand, because it was the director for the US Mental Institution which proposed Dr. Lilly to join the CIA, then we can understand a more great idea that also that institution was implanting their internees with electrodes. And those doctors, the psychiatrists, was also working behind the secrecy of FBI or CIA or defense research institutions. And we can confirm from both medical research reports and books, and so that the US mental institutions had started to implant mental patients already 1949. This is what medical research reports say. And using people for behavior modification.
So one could say healthcare, military and secret services like CIA are involved in this control.
That is how the project has been organized, and also the deeper reason for why nothing has, for not that much have coming out about this technology, and the extensive abuse about it.
Yes, yes.
Also, it was an famous American doctor. His name was Robert Heath. He was psychiatrist and neurosurgeon, and many of his research reports is what they are public, and some of them are also compiled in this heavy document which is named Frankenstein. It is based on just only medical and scientific research projects regarding to this technology, two-way radio communication with the brain. And when he was developing new methods to implant electrodes in the brain, because from the early beginning one had to open up or push the electrodes through the nostrils. But very quickly, very soon, the electrodes, they became to be very just thick like a hair. And this is 1953 about. New York Times had articles about this from 1953 when they referred about the size of a hair or a thickness.
Yeah, already, yes.
And so during that time when Robert Heath were making his test to push electrodes just through the skull, he had 20% mortality. 20% of his patients died. And this tells also something about the mentality by which this technology has been developed. And all this can be confirmed from scientific reports.
Yes.
And New York Times has in fact been the best newspaper probably in the world, which has had a lot of articles about this technology, and they have also had 3 political leaders to demand a better knowledge, more general knowledge and debate about this increasing danger. And the first political leader they had was 1967. It had the title Push Button People, and in that leader they mentioned that probably some countries in the world had already started to make planning about using this technology to control their own populations. And in fact, this was valid for not only the United States but also Sweden and also, of course, communist countries. This technology was developed in the same way in democratic and communist countries.
Yes.
The second political leader New York Times had was published 1970, and it had the title Brainwave. Brainwave indicated that we had to change the word from brainwashing to brainwaving with the new technology of two-way radio communication with the brain, and they gave the chilling idea of that we were on our way into a society where a newborn baby's first experience of life would be to be implanted and have their brain controlled by supercomputers. And that is 41 years ago, and this technology has become to be increasingly more advanced and misused.
Yes.
The third political leader they had
in the New York Times.
In the New York Times, yes, came in the summer of 1977. During that summer, New York Times had challenged the CIA. They had disclosed the CIA's brain program, MK Ultra, and they had had 30 articles published regarding to the brain technology, its abuse, and how that the CIA had built up a state, as they called a state within the state, by cooperation with hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, prisons, medical research institutions, doctors, and so on. And they were all working for the CIA to buy this technology. Even child hospitals were referring to have coming into this cooperation. And in the end of this disclosure, they published the political leader, control CIA, not behavior. And that was very important words they gave, because they also demanded juridical and ethical responsibility for all people within CIA which had been a part of the project. This never, of course, it never came to be a reality, but however, they have made a lot of good efforts to get this technology up to people's knowing.
And then I think that there was a hearing in the Congress, wasn't it, after that?
Well, it was like that. The Senate had to take over this matter and made investigation about it. Yes, they did. I can just make a short quote about what they wrote in this political leader, New York Times. So we must add repugnant medical experimentation to the list of horror stories emerging from the Central Intelligence Agency. It was no secret that the agency hunted desperately for means to control human behavior. Whatever formal structures are erected within government to hold our most secret agencies accountable, there is no substitute for also holding their senior officials ethically and legally responsible as individuals for all activities. The country should be told who sanctioned such projects and how. And this is what we can what we should know is even more important today, when these technologies has grown more extensive.
To the nanotechnology, for example.
Yes, and today, at this time, they had also developed methods to mix up medicines or injections with radio substances and biological chips.
Vaccines.
To inject in people, and so their brain became to be connected to the supercomputers. This has been, in fact, already in 1959, New York Times wrote an article about the risk of what they called for a pharmacological warfare between US and the Soviet. And that was because Soviet had made advances in brain technology and had coming to the point where they could mix radio substances, kind of a brain substances we can call them for, mix them up with medical pills, medical tablets, pharmaceutical substances, and that those substances fostered the brain and established the contact with the supercomputers. That they wrote about already in 1959 in New York Times, and of course it was a reality about that time also in Western countries. And yeah, what we can see, we know also from the research reports from one of the most famous research institution in Sweden is Karolinska Institute. They developed in the last part of the 50s small transmitters which could be inserted under the skin or via the nostrils into people, and establishing the two-way radio communication.
Would you dare to tell the audience what happened to you?
Well, the reason why I got interest of this matter was because I was one very early experimental subject for it. I was implanted during an operation at Swedish hospital, Stockholm Hospital, Södersjukhuset, and at an operation 1967. And I realized that in the 70s, and I also...
How did you realize it?
Well, the first sign, well, I didn't know that. I must say, at that time I didn't had any idea about that doctor made any abuse or implanted people. I didn't know anything about this technology, of course. But after that operation, I got a signal in my head. It was not very disturbing, but it was a radio signal I had day and night. And
one tone or
it was
humming in some way. Humming in some way. Or
yeah, more, yeah, something like that. And it didn't disturb me so much, but many times I questioning myself from where it came and why it had started just after this operation. That operation was performed by a doctor. His name was Kurt Strand, and he's not anymore alive. But that was the beginning of my story. Later on, I got help from professors and who testified to my implants, to this transmitter, and I have also undergone operation. It has been much more about my own case, but that it is so much that I have to say it will be a special program we have to make about that. If I just can talk about the general use of this technology, I will just to give a picture of how it was developed. I can also quote the Swedish defense researchers. His name was P.M. Persson. He wrote an article 1965 about this technology under the heading Biomedical Telemetry. This technology is biomedical telemetry. It's a more mind control or behavior control. It's just a part of the more broad biomedical telemetry. Telemetry stands for remote control. Tele, remote, and metri, measure. And the biomedical is just, of course, biological and medical information which can be transmitted. And in fact, what they got from a person, from an implanted person in the supercomputer is in fact everything. Everything, your biological being, your mental being, your opinions, even your sensory functions. They can show your seeing on a screen, and this goes working internationally.
And the other way around, they can induce feelings to you and hurt you.
Yeah, they can. The same thing. And already from the, as we said, we could see from Professor John Lilly, they could change opinions extremely quickly, as he said. And this came up also in the very famous scientific magazine Science. They had extensive article about this, 1956. The November 30. They had 14 pages about brain control. And where they also did take up the probable misuse of that technology. But this military researcher, P.M. Persson, who wrote in his article 1965, he said that the first brain systems were established in the United States 1950. Nobody knows about brain systems today.
Yes.
It is 60 years which has gone on, and those has been more and more sophisticated, and more people have become to be victims for this technology. However, he also said that in Sweden, he said, we have extensively use in medical research with this technology, as he said, working with implanted transmitters. And that meant, of course, it was also extensively abuse of people who had become to be unwittingly victims for this technology during the time when they were put to sleep.
And they can
for operation, yeah.
Read your thoughts. They can implant their thoughts into you that you think it's your thought, and you act concerning to this. Is that
they can already. In fact, already we believe that this is something regarding to science fiction much more, but it is not just one example from the article I told about before, 1953 in New York Times, they said that the researchers by this technology had coming in contact, direct contact with thoughts, among other examples as they gave. So thoughts was was just disclosed. They were not anymore private for the people who had become to be victims of this technology, and that has been so from the time from 60 years ago about.
And that means if they want, they can change your personality.
Yeah, they can change the behavior, and this is also what is a reality today. Is an official program from the Swedish Defense Research Institution, and they declare it openly that their goal is to direct people's cognitive functions during a lifetime. This via this technology, and but of course we must also understand that this technology, which is in fact the most terrible thing which has been developed in secret, also have had a lot of protests, and this has happened as well in Sweden as in the United States, as in France, or also Russia. In fact, it was Alexander Gurov, a member of the parliament, who tried to regulate this technology in Russia or the year 2000 with a bill. But one of the most famous actions which ever were taken to regulate it was done by the very famous person John Glenn. He was the first astronaut for the United States, and later on he became to be member of the Senate. And he gave his last 3 years in the Senate, other word, from 1994 to 1997, to try to regulate this, the misuse of this technology. And I will just, as one example, give some words what he told about this. But it could be valid to any country in the world, anywhere. This technology is global. It goes on in every country. Those countries where they don't have the technological knowledge themselves are victims of the CIA, for example, or other military institutions from United States or Soviet or today Russia, or maybe Sweden. They are all working together. John Glenn, when he started his investigation in 1994, he announced this to his colleagues in the Senate, as he gave an information letter. In that he wrote, "Today the Government's Affairs Committee holds the first in what likely will be a number of hearings into the government's secret radiation experiments. I hope to be able to assure the people in my home state of Ohio and those around in the country that their government not any longer conducting experiments unknown to their people. A large number of federal agencies are or were involved in such projects. For example, Department of Defense, Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, and National Aerospace Association, NSA, and the same quotations, the same questions we ask about human radiation experiments, past and present, can and should be asked about other research on our own people. Which people never have that was quotation ending. And this is where people have become to be victims, where people not have admitted to come into experiments of any kind. And however, it took 3 years before he ended this investigation. And in the speech he held in the Senate, he took up the possibility to also use medicines for establishing the contact to the supercomputers, and that this was going on.
Did he also mention vaccination programs?
Well, this is of course the same thing, that he indicated that medicines, many medicines were used for or mixed up with biological chips.
Because I could imagine that the hype concerning the swine flu was that people get vaccinated and then they can get some controlling chips.
It has been some evidence against for this. But in fact, the best of all evidences to just understand this very, very serious matter is to hear the words from John Glenn. He said, "You did not know about it, but the last time they went to the doctor or to the hospital, your wife or your daughter or your son, they became to be the subject of a medical experiment that they not even were told about. They were given medicines, they were given pills, but they got radiation. You just think about it, your own family, who might be, the next time they go to a doctor, the subject of some medical research that they are not even told about. I do not think there can be many things more un-American than that. Those tragic incidents I have mentioned have resulted in changes in the way human research subjects are treated. We want to close the gaps on legislation so that no American is subjected to experiments like this." And well, what we must also add to his words is that he is just only talking about the medical experiments they can be misused for. But this, the brain-computer interface, which one become to be a part of, it is also of a more broad use. For example, behavior modification, statistic, just surveillance and control.
Yeah, the goal is the enslavement of mankind.
Yeah, we will by that this is a last step to lose all the freedom, when we're losing the freedom to our own brain and behavior.
Yes.
Just to come to what I would like to say as the best protest anyone have done against this development. In fact, it was made 2005 by a group the European group, the European Commission Group of Ethics. They are recommended the European Commission solutions and ideas about technological and scientific matters. And the chairman of this group was the Swedish professor Göran Hermeren. And
in what subject he was professor?
He's professor in philosophy.
Oh.
Yeah. And it is the best explanation about this technology and the very danger of the misuse of it. And that is what I like to quote as the last words of this recording. They said, brain-computer interface over direct brain control take information from the brain and externalize it. It should be stressed that there are no reliable scientific investigations concerning the long-term health aspect of implants in the human body. Contemporary society is confronted with changes that have to do with the anthropological essence of people. There is a stepwise shift in progress after being observed via video surveillance and biometrics. People are now modified via various electronic devices under the skin, chips and smart tags. The unrestricted freedom of some may endanger the health and safety of others. As in other areas, the freedom to use implants in one's body collide with potential negative social effects. How far can such implants be a threat to human autonomy, particularly when they are implanted in our brains? How far can such implants have irreversible impacts in the human body and for the human mentality, and how will they influence human memory? Does a human being cease to be such a being in cases where some parts of his or her body, particularly the brain, are supplemented by implants? How far can implants become a threat to privacy? How far can implants give an individual or a group specific capabilities that could become to be a threat to society? How far should we be subject to the control of such devices or by other people using those devices? How far should the use of such implants be allowed? To what extent might this technology be misused by the military? For example, intrusive technology bypasses normal sensory experiences. Implants that will influence biologically or culturally future generations. The ethical group stresses that the following possibilities should be banned. Implants used for changing the identity, memory, self-perception, and perception of others. Implants used to enhance capabilities in order to dominate others. A broad social and political debate is needed as to what kind of applications should be accepted and legally approved. Those different quotations I took is just from different parts. They are not connected. They are from different parts of this 30-page declaration they made to the European Commission. I must just I would like to just give a comment to one of those quotations, and it is what means by intrusive technology which bypass normally sensory experience. What they did ask about possibly misused by the military. And this is the possibility to transmit voices or sights or smell into other people. They can, by this technology, this is what it means, intrusive technology which bypasses normally sensory experience. This is very important part of this technology because it is misused heavily by the security agencies and the military researchers. And this is how to, and it has this technology, this idea to transmit voices into people's brain, directly into the brain, bypass normal sensory functions, has been developed already from the 1950s, can be verified, because at that time the social department in Canada gave a substitute to this kind of projects. It was in fact Professor Evan Cameron who started with this. He became later he was later the first chairman for the World Psychiatric Association. And it is interesting to know because the psychiatrists, they mean that all people who have this problem, they are have a mental disease. But they are the ones who have developed this technology, and we can see it clearly, and many books have been written about it. Even psychiatrists in Canada have written articles about it.
It's a nasty camouflage.
Yes, it is. It is also a part of the behavior manipulation and the behavior technology. And in today's world, in Sweden, for example, but this is in general in all our modern countries, this technology is developed behind defense research institutions, and they talking openly about that their goal is to direct people's cognitive functions for a lifetime.
Thank you very much, Robert Naeslund.